Palestinian Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki delivered a speech during the session. He accused the United States of failing to be a facilitator of peace on the Jerusalem issue. Take a listen.
It naturally affects the status of the United States as a mediator of peace, because it has failed in the test of Jerusalem, despite our warnings and the warnings of the entire world not to take this test seriously, and our warnings of the danger of taking any positions and any decisions that would inflame religious feelings and would contribute towards transferring this political solution that can be solved to a religious war that has no boundaries.
Let's get you more now on that emergency session. I'm joined live from New York by UN correspondent Liling Tan. Liling, what's the latest from the UN General Assembly emergency session?
Hello there, Panina. Well, the vote is about to happen. We are still awaiting it. So far, the session has been ongoing for slightly under an hour, and we've already seen some drama play out from member states addressing the General Assembly about their positions on this very contentious issue. Now, several countries, including Yemen, Egypt, and Turkey, have called the U.S. move shameful and illegal. And we've also heard from the U.S. ambassador herself, Nikki Haley. Now, she expressed the U.S. displeasure at being singled out in this General Assembly vote, and said that the U.S. will remember the vote and how it was singled out for attack, and simply for exercising its own right, its sovereign right to decide where it wants to put its embassy. Now, you mentioned earlier the Security Council vote that occurred earlier this week. Now, this General Assembly resolution is a version of that draft resolution, and the failure of that resolution to pass at the Security Council is what prompted Egypt, Turkey, and Yemen to bring the resolution here to the General Assembly, because the U.S. has no veto here. Now, while a UN General Assembly resolution also isn't legally binding, the aim here is for the international community to show once again how isolated the United States is on yet another international issue. Kanina?
And Liling, this controversy has been ongoing for weeks now. Why is the United States so adamant amid all this opposition?
Well, for starters, this was a campaign promise that it seems the U.S. president wanted to make good on. And we've also seen U.S. President Trump try to differentiate himself from previous administrations when it comes to this issue, especially the Obama administration, which he has criticized for being too weak in its support for Israel. Some critics have also said this is an example of the U.S. administration's anti-Muslim sentiment on the back of those travel bans that we saw involving several Muslim countries. Now, while this decision was certainly an unpopular one for so many within the international community, one wonders whether the U.S. expected this level of pushback from all these other nations. As one Middle East analyst put it, Aaron David Miller told the New York Times, they thought they were taking Jerusalem off the table. They now have guaranteed it will be there for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So, Panina, we certainly saw that this decision by the U.S. has cast an even greater, more intense spotlight on this issue.
And Liling, we're now seeing Donald Trump threatening to cut aid if the vote goes against him. How concerned should we be over that?
I think it's a reasonable concern, but also it depends on which country you're talking about. Now, while the U.S. president can hold off or delay some of these aid deliveries, in order to cancel some of these aid agreements, there needs to be new legislation. So it's not a direct, easy route to take. And also, a lot of these aid deals, the decision depends on the U.S. Congress, such as in the case of Egypt, which, as you mentioned earlier, penned this resolution for the General Assembly and the Security Council, but it also last year received more than $1 billion in U.S. aid. So for Egypt, perhaps Egypt may be more vulnerable to this threat. Now, also, many of these agreements are made within strategic cooperations on security and on economy, and it seems like because the U.S. would be hitting at its own deals with some of its strongest allies, in threatening to withdraw aid, it may be shooting itself in its own foot, so to speak. Panina?
All right, Liling Tan, live for us there in New York. Thank you, Liling. Now, we're getting you live pictures from New York and the UN General Assembly emergency session. Let's listen in.
The inalienable right of the Palestinian people to self-determination and independence, which entails a principled position against the military occupation of the Palestinian people and their land. Secondly, the right of both the peoples of Israel and Palestine to live side by side in peace in their own states with internationally recognized borders. Thirdly, a belief that there can be no military solution to the conflict and that peaceful negotiations is the only means of ensuring lasting peace, security and stability. And fourthly, a commitment to multilateralism in order to secure a sustainable solution and a rules-based international order. Finally, we appeal to the government of the United States of America to reconsider its decision to relocate its embassy in Israel to Jerusalem, as such a move compromises and undermines the principles of a two-state solution based on a peaceful coexistence between the peoples of Israel and Palestine. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of South Africa.
Right, so those are live pictures from New York of the UN General Assembly emergency session. That session was called by Turkey and Yemen on behalf of the Organization for Islamic Cooperation.